Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we have a thought-provoking presentation by evolutionary astrologer Daniel Fiverson titled The Pluto Paradigm, Metamorphosis through Karmic Necessity. In the webinar we did have a lively debate in the chat box when the chart of Donald Trump was pulled up. So if you'd like to make comments on this video, please keep them as civil as possible. Quite looking forward to the day where we don't have to speak about him at all. But anyway, I digress. And lastly, if you wish to view our current class workshop and webinar offerings, please visit KeplerCollege.org. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So on to today's fantastic presenter. Daniel is a certified evolutionary astrologer trained in the Jeffrey Wolf Green method of evolutionary astrology. He is an astrological intuitive and metaphysical practitioner and has studied astrology, tarot, and I Ching since the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto in the 1960s. He took his first astrology class in 1977 at his first Saturn return. Wandering a metaphysical path, Daniel embraced the I Ching, Kabbalah, and Eastern spirituality. Jeffrey Wolf Green's work magnetized Daniel to evolutionary astrology and its understanding of how planetary archetypes are expressed parallel to the spectrum of human consciousness. And you can find Daniel on his Facebook page at Evolutionary Astrology, also at his YouTube channel, as well as his website, evolutionaryastrologer.net. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today, and it's been wonderful to have you here, and I'm going to pass on the baton to you.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Nothing is more exciting than to be in a room filled with people who all believe that astrology is not pseudoscience. So thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank KeplerCollege for the opportunity to present this material today, and especially Lori for coordinating this event, Mary for creating this beautiful title graphic, and Callum for moderating. We'll have a Q&A, and I will take questions at the end. Today is certainly an auspicious day to discuss Pluto, as it begins its synodic cycle with the Sun, and both ingress Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius already delivered an opening monologue from March to June of last year, and Pluto will return briefly to Capricorn in September, and then in November again ingress Aquarius, where it will reside until 2043. We are at the pre-dawn moment of a long-heralded new age. Can you feel the Aquarian energy? It has already been a wild ride. There's much more to come, so please fasten your seatbelts. Today's talk is the first of a series of two about the evolutionary astrology perspective of Pluto. Today, I will review the core principles of EA, evolutionary astrology, as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green. We will examine the paradigm of the nature of Pluto and the process of metamorphosis through evolutionary karmic necessity. By the end of this presentation, you will see how the analysis of Pluto in the natal chart reveals the entire nature of the chart. In part two, I will detail Pluto's expression in each of the houses and delineate how this process works through each of the 12 astrological archetypes. At the end of this talk, I will outline the Pluto archetype of the natal charts of two prominent people with similar planetary aspects, but dramatically different life expressions. As a core understanding, it's essential to recognize that each of the 12 astrological archetypes extends across a wide range of expressions, from distortion to enlightenment. It's essential to establish where individuals are along that broad spectrum of conscious awareness to understand how their chart works. As an astrologer, EA has gifted me with a working model from which I can consult one-on-one with any individual using their natal chart to help them understand why the circumstances of their lives have unfolded the way they have. I present these concepts to you today to add to your astrological toolbox to meet your clients and yourself from a new perspective. Let's take a deep breath as we wander and wonder through the Pluto paradigm, the core metaphysical component of evolutionary astrology, and dive into how your natal chart reveals the nature of your soul's journey through this lifetime. A child is born on that day, and at that hour, when the celestial rays are in mathematical harmony with his individual karma. His horoscope is a challenging portrait revealing his unalterable past and its probable future result. And this was Swami Sri Yukteswar, a teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda. We're all familiar with the whats of our lives, but do we know the whys? We might understand how the sun and moon in our charts express our personalities and how our ascendant determines how we meet the world. But do we accept and acknowledge the circumstances of our lives and why they have unfolded the way they have? Do we understand why the people who helped or hurt us came into our lives when they did? Do we know who we are, why we are here, and what lessons we worked on prior to this lifetime and continue to work on in this lifetime? These are the profound questions that evolutionary astrology answers. Let's talk about the planet Pluto. In 2006, the International Astronomical Union redefined the definition of a planet for the first time since Galileo. Interestingly, it was the discovery of Eris, arguably the most contentious planet in the solar system, that upset both the worlds of astronomy and astrology. Without question, Pluto is a full-fledged member of our solar system, not a minor anything. For many astrologers, especially evolutionary astrologers like myself, the notion that Pluto is anything less than that borders on being laughable, if not astrologically sacrilegious. This synchronicity with Eris is neither an anomaly nor a coincidence. I have been writing about Eris since 2015, and it is her nature to upset the apple cart. Eris is a topic which I hope to return to on another evening. Tonight, I want to discuss Pluto as an astrologer, not an astronomer. Both professions look at the same sky, but we see a different heaven. Just the name Pluto often instills fear and foreboding. He was called the king of the underworld, Hades, hell, the abode of the dead, the netherworld. Eternal damnation is just one of his nicknames and epithets describing the loneliest of the Greek gods. No temples were built to honor Hades. All the other deities had temples erected to them filled with faithful supplicants, except Roman Vesta, Hestia to the Greeks. Her shrine was the hearth in each home and at the center of the community that held the sacred fire. When the Greeks wanted to contact him, they pounded on the ground to get his attention. Loneliness was his eternal condition. He came up from his subterranean home to snatch the maiden Persephone to enjoy a conjugal partnership like most other gods and goddesses. He did ask permission to have her, but from her brother, not her mother. We should forgive him this masculine oversight. This is just some mythology as background to our story. From an evolutionary astrology perspective, the entry point to begin unraveling the astrological puzzle of the natal chart is Pluto. This is not to say that the natal chart, that the natal sun, moon, and ascendant are unimportant. It is essential to understand that all the planets and archetypes of the nativity are the supporting actors for the karmic necessities embedded in the Pluto paradigm. Pluto provides the baseline for understanding the entire birth chart and the central evolutionary concerns of the soul. According to many spiritual and metaphysical beliefs, the soul is an immutable consciousness with a finite identity that persists from lifetime to lifetime. The soul is the source and an extension of who and what we are. It is the part of us that exists outside of time and space. Pluto correlates directly to the soul, our guardian angel, the higher self, however you express your connection to what's numinous. We are the incarnate experience of our soul having that human experience. Each incarnation is an energetic projection of our soul. The soul manifests a human personality with subjective consciousness and unconsciousness in each lifetime to learn about itself. Pluto is the astrological vehicle of the natural law of evolution. We have all heard the expression, we are spiritual beings having a human lifetime. Over many lifetimes, we play out all the roles in a karmic play as the living extensions of our non-incarnate self, as the soul learns about itself through its incarnations. With our families and individuals close to us in this lifetime, we act out the drama as an ensemble cast, for better or worse. We trade roles. We are the father, then the mother, the son, and then the daughter, the grandmother, then the grandfather, the sister, the brother, the aunt, the friend, the enemy, the Plutonian uncle who molested us, and the Persephone-like child who was molested. The Seth material was a series of channeled writings from a personality who called himself Seth. The teachings illuminated the true nature of reality and human consciousness. This is a quote from the original volume. When you emerge into physical life, not only is your mind not a blank slate, but you are already equipped with a memory bank far surpassing any computer. You face your first day on the planet with skills and abilities already built in, though they may not be used, and they are not merely the result of heredity. And that was written by Jane Roberts, who channeled the personality who called himself Seth. Pluto is the ruler of the emotionally fixed sign of Scorpio. Pluto correlates to our deepest unconscious security needs, desires, and emotional patterns. Pluto correlates directly to karma, metamorphosis, DNA, and genetics. Pluto is the evolutionary engine that is constantly driving us forward. Evolutionary intention propels us forward even when it feels like we are standing still or moving backward. Pluto correlates to the desires of the soul that have led to the current lifetime and the desires that set its ongoing evolutionary needs in motion. Pluto holds the record of past events of the highest intensity that have marked the development of the self. Pluto encapsulates, quote, what has come before, our karmic history, not mentally, but through our emotional memory. From lifetime to lifetime, we pick up where we left off. We don't remember our past lives intellectually. The emotional experiences of the first 7 years of our lives with our parents, brothers, and sisters leading up to our first Saturn square are the reminders of where we left off. Our primary need is security. Security is dependent on maintaining what is known and safe. Pluto correlates to our deepest unconscious security needs, desires, and emotional patterns. Pluto correlates directly to karma, metamorphosis, DNA, and genetics. Excuse me, I repeated that sentence. Pluto correlates to the desires of the soul that have led to the current lifetime. Oh, I apologize. I've got a repetition here. I have to forgive me. There is a compulsion to repeat old patterns born out of the natural resistance to the evolutionary impetus to grow or transform and diverge from the security of what is known. Such resistance can become a source of significant stress, illness, or dysfunction. The degree of resistance determines the cataclysmic intensity of karmic necessity. First cited in 1930, around the time of the discovery of atomic energy, Pluto correlates to the exercise of power. The dynamics of Pluto work in 3 ways. We self-empower ourselves and stand in our power. Someone takes our power, or we willingly give our power away. Often it is some combination of all three. The individual identity patterns brought in from the past, the desires, beliefs, ideas, perceptions, and personal values are defined by the natal placement of Pluto and its aspects to other points in the chart, supported by Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. The outer planets set up personal inner planets' content and nature. Saturn defines the structure and form of our subjective consciousness, its shape and boundaries. Even if Saturn does not aspect a natal planet, it sets its mode of operation by the phase relationship to each planet and by the nature of its sign house and any aspects to other planets. Uranus correlates to our individuated unconscious. The Leo-Aquarius polarity correlates to the self-actualization process. Leo is how we express our personality, derived from the self-awareness realized in the fourth house by the moon and Cancer. Uranus defines the process of who we are becoming. It correlates to the collective unconscious. Neptune relates to the groundswell of beliefs that underscores the zeitgeist in any period of history. Neptune formats each Pluto generation coming onto the planet. Each generation comes in on the same bus. Pluto's house and sign placement express the generational frequency that each individual rode in on. For example, those born during the transit of Pluto in Cancer, family structure was formatted by gender. Men were Marlboro men, and women were Betty Crocker. The societal expectation was that men would go out into the world to work to support their families. Women stayed home, had babies, did the homework, did the housework, and they probably did the homework too, and prepared meals. The self-actualizing Pluto and Leo generation broke that mold. Men became secretaries and house husbands. Women went into the workforce. The Pluto and Virgo generation, nicknamed Generation X, came in with a cross to bear, to heal the world, and so on. Each new generation is bearing the birthmark of the collective beliefs embedded in the times that they were born. Security is sought through saturation with earthly experience, learning through the five senses and direct emotional experience about gender, culture, ethnicity, religion, poverty, wealth, health, and illness. And this is a quote from Teilhard de Chardin, French priest and scientist. The core needs for each soul and each of us in each lifetime is security, as I said. The soul also seeks security. Jeff Green asks, excuse me, Jeff Green asks, how can a perfect God create an imperfect world? This implies that the soul is perfectly imperfect, just like we are. Each incarnate personality that the soul creates expresses the evolutionary necessities that the soul seeks for security. We learn through direct emotional experience, through our emotional body, not intellectually or by mental constructs. We rarely respond positively to input from others that suggest lifestyle change. Smokers continue for years without hesitation. Smokers have even been known to reach for a cigarette immediately after open heart surgery. The same can be said for heavy drinkers. In general, we don't change until we have a direct emotional experience that disallows us from continuing whatever brought about the negative experience. Pluto works in four ways to advance our evolutionary growth. Two of these are cataclysmic, two are not. The first is that the soul forms relationships with people or circumstances that symbolizes something it needs or desires. Plutonian osmosis occurs by absorbing and forming a relationship metamorphosed to existing limitations. The second is when the personality becomes overly identified with a person or set of circumstances to the extent that growth is stifled. An emotionally cataclysmic event will occur. The rug will get pulled out from under their feet. A new awareness reveals an undiscovered potential is the third way. A metamorphosis occurs as the soul begins to work with that new capacity. And the fourth way is that there can come a moment when the soul becomes aware it is stagnating. There is a sense of meaningless to life. The awareness is internalized, and progressively, the individual loses their ability to function in the role that they have been used to. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, reflect our emotional nature. The water triad traces the evolution of consciousness. The moon correlates to the emotional body. The moon in Cancer, the sign it rules, link to the need for emotional security. The moon responds or reacts in each moment it is the most conscious part of our awareness. Our emotions are our moment-to-moment sense of feeling safe. Each personality that the soul manifests has an ego, which correlates to the moon. Ego is not a bad word. The moon is the focal point for our self-image. It is how we see ourselves. The moon is the lens on the quote camera of our self-awareness. Without the lens, there is no clear image. As the ruler of Scorpio, Pluto correlates to our deepest needs for emotional security through our awareness of what lies below the surface in our individuated subconscious. We bury the parts of ourselves that we don't like in the recesses of our subconscious. This is called soul loss in shamanism. Spiritual bypass is a distortion that occurs when Scorpio introspection is avoided or skipped over. A jump is made from the fourth house Cancer to the 12th house Pisces, skipping the inner work of the eighth house of Pluto. The awakening process requires that we go down into our underworld to recover what we buried there. Unless we do the inner work by delving into that underworld to recover and reintegrate what has been lost and hidden, we cannot awaken. Hermes, Mercury to the Romans, was the only god who could enter and leave the underworld unharmed. We all have Mercury in our charts. We can use our cognitive skills to safely go down into the underworld and restore the parts of ourselves that have been splintered off. This is generally the work of therapists and counselors, but they merely guide us to reintegrate ourselves. Pisces correlates to ultimate truth and unconditional love. It connects us to that which is greater than ourselves. It relates to washing away all the false perceptions and agendas that maintain our separateness from Source. It is the awakening into the ocean of all that is and the culmination of an entire lifetime of self-awareness and work of the self in Virgo and the sixth house. Through lifelong patterns of emotional experiences, Pluto generates the karmic circumstances, relationships, and experiences that move us along our evolutionary path. The need for security is the compelling force that maintains familiar behavior from the past. If resistance to evolutionary impulses is too strong, Pluto pulls the rug out from under us, activating change. It can become an obsession if the desire is strong enough. The caterpillar looks up at the butterfly and says, "You'll never get me up in one of those things." Greater resistance will manifest cataclysmic evolution. Non-resistance will produce slow, gradual development. The strength of the resistance to change determines the magnitude of the generated karmic event. Often, it takes more than one intense emotional incident for change to occur. It emulates the experience of "Can you hear me now?" The wave is the same as the ocean, though it is not the whole ocean. So each wave of creation is part of the eternal ocean of spirit. The ocean can exist without the waves, but the waves cannot exist without the ocean. Paramahansa Yogananda. A core concept of evolutionary astrology is the dynamic of dual desires correlating to the waves separating from the ocean. The arching crest of the wave correlates to the moon, our immediate emotional awareness of the world around us. Our emotional desires center around what makes us feel secure. Pluto correlates to the body of the wave, empowering our outward thrust for life experience. Neptune correlates to the fathomless ocean, the source of all that is. As the wave arches from the sea, its perception is that it is separate and sees itself only as the wave. Through experience, the wave arches back into the great body of water from which it came, time after time, and realizes that it is not just the wave, but also the sea. These are the two coexisting desires within the soul. The first desire is to separate from source, like the wave that believes it is separate from the ocean. The second desire is to return to the source of its creation, just as the wave must eventually recognize that it is merely an extension of something much greater than itself. The interaction between these two opposing forces, to separate and to return, weaves the individual stream of karmic events, a lifetime of personal experiences and circumstances of successes and failures, truth and falsehood, love found and love lost. Desire is the engine that drives this duality. Mars, the lower octave of Pluto, is the leading edge of our evolution. Mars determines what we need and the choices we must make according to our Venusian values and priorities and our personally defined needs for security. Actions lead to reactions. This is what we call karma. We reap what we sow. It is neither punishment nor retribution. It is simply the unfinished business carried over into this lifetime. We are all on the same path. We are just at different mile markers. Evolution is based on the progressive elimination of all of the separating desires regarding relationships, money, and power. As these separating desires diminish, the desire to return to source increases and takes precedence in our consciousness. Desire is the determinant of the choices that we think we need. Each desire drives us towards a certain goal. In each case, we are only done with it when we're done with it. Like water, we must fill up every space we pass through before moving on. Over many lifetimes, we gradually exhaust the agenda of separating desires. Our consciousness and our place on our evolutionary path determine the nature of our karmic necessities. Evolution is not a theory, it's a fact. So when we look at a natal chart, how do we determine how the planetary archetypes are working? Does a Pisces moon imply someone who is a drug addict or an alcoholic? Or are they someone with compassion and understanding for everyone they meet with an open heart? These evolutionary conditions are essential because they are how the archetypes in a natal chart work. Our evolutionary condition will determine the lessons and karmic necessities we will encounter. As astrologers, when a client comes for a reading, we must first ask some questions to determine where this person is on the spectrum of evolutionary conditions. Generally, their work in the world and their connection to the work around them reveal their mile marker. Knowing their childhood relationships with their parents and siblings is essential. These life experiences set the foundation for the rest of our lives. Each of these states I'm going to describe evolve through 3 stages of development. Jeffrey Wolf Green described 4 states of 4 conditions of the soul called evolutionary states. Along this pathway, our choices and our life experiences reflect our current evolutionary mile marker. Jeffrey called the first evolutionary state dimly evolved. I think that this is a different slide. I apologize. Over many lifetimes, we progressed through 3 stages of each of the evolutionary states I will describe. The progression between the states and their stages is not a one-note song. They are a chord of notes that span what has been experienced and what compromises the next states of development. The same holds true for the transition points between the states. We retain certain behavior patterns from the past as we work through them to establish and maintain the next stage of evolutionary growth. Jeffrey calls the first evolutionary state dimly evolved. It correlates to a lifetime of limited consciousness that results from a variety of different karmic causes. These individuals need to complete a specific, quote, remedial evolutionary lesson. According to Jeffrey, he said, it is either souls evolving into human consciousness from other life forms such as animals and plants, or souls that are de-evolving backward into this condition due to karmic causes. This is Jeffrey's quote. It is unlikely that we will encounter any of these souls in a session. As we emerge from the animal kingdom, the evolutionary condition we first work through is called consensus state. In the animal kingdom, we learn that being part of the herd ensures survival. There is safety in the herd. The gazelle that separates from the herd is the one the lioness will take home as dinner for her cubs. In consensus, the desire is to be like everyone else. We want to dress like others, talk like others, think like others, and be like others. We want what others have. We want to learn how to play the game and get ahead. This is herd mentality. Sameness and uniformity are the safety net. Progressively, the soul exhausts one separating desire after another: relationships, sexuality, material possessions, physical beauty, wealth, power, status, family, career, and so on. As each desire is fulfilled, a temporary sense of satisfaction is achieved, but an even greater attainment is necessary to feel satisfied. In consensus state, the desire is to be like everyone else. We wanted, I'm sorry to repeat, I'm going to skip it. In consensus state, there is acceptance of what religious leaders say without questioning it. If their spiritual leader says that astrology or tarot is Satan worship, they believe it rather than experience for themselves to learn about it and make up their own mind. Over numerous lifetimes and challenging karmic events, the soul sees that none of the achievements and rewards of the material world, no treasure, no success or acquisition, is as fulfilling or satisfying as expected. They achieve everything that can be achieved materially, but still feel emotionally and mentally insecure. And now there is much more that they can lose. Their possessions and material rewards have lost their luster. There is no longer the lust for the chase to acquire them. The old ways of finding fulfillment fade away. A new realization arises. There must be something more. As this shift occurs, the soul begins what Carl Jung called the individuation process. We move into what Jeffrey Wolf Green calls the individuated state. As consciousness increases, the emerging persona begins to recognize that they are like everyone else, but not like everyone else. They have certain abilities, creativity, talents, and skills that are uniquely their own. Their priorities, values, and choices begin to reflect the need to understand who they are apart from everyone else. This new perception alters their perspective of their inner and outer worlds. They pursue different directions, interests, and ways of exploring the world around them. They might become interested in the natural world around them as hikers, campers, or gardeners. They are attracted to other like-minded souls and groups exploring alternative lifestyles and beliefs. They might have a tarot reading or take an astrology class. They might begin to read metaphysical and philosophical books and articles. Some relationships will fall away, but new ones will form. However, for a period of time, they put on their 9-to-5 wardrobe during the day and continue to show up around the water cooler at work. As an example, their old boss, for whom they had a great rapport, might retire, and there was a personality conflict with the new one, creating significant changes in their job, or some other dramatic life revision occurs that compels change. This middle stage of this state can be very challenging because a great effort is required to break away from group thinking to express their own beliefs. The need for security still holds them back. Over time, evolutionary necessity will continue to create pressures to release the resistance to the new influences, creating crises that compel the individual to change and adapt to the new impulses they are experiencing. A rebellion against consensus authority can develop as well. Insecurity can begin to disallow socialization with the general population for fear of being drawn back in. There can be a pushback and need for complete withdrawal from consensus reality and self-exile from society. They fear being drawn back into the fold and losing the progress made with their newfound freedom. As they develop their newly realized self, a shift occurs in their self-understanding, opening up a new sense of self-awareness and personal freedom. They begin to find pathways back to participating in society again. They let go of the fear of losing their hard-won individuality. The ability to share their newfound creativity and personal resources emerges. They recognize that they can make the shift and actualize the financial and emotional support they need to grow themselves by sharing their creativity with others. Consciousness does not increase arithmetically, it increases geometrically. As consciousness grows, the soul's second, very singular desire begins to emerge, the desire to return to source. As we spiritualize, we realize that we are simultaneously the wave and the ocean. We become aware that we are connected to everything and everyone around us. We become aware that there are two kinds of law, man-made and natural law. Man-made law consists of arbitrary, subjective, consensus-oriented ethics, moral judgments, rules, and regulations that often are based solely on self-interest. Natural law is the universal foundation of life, the fundamental framework that permeates reality. There are no straight lines in nature. Everything in nature develops according to its unique inherent design. A hologram of the universe emerges. Interwoven holistic patterns permeate how nature is structured and substantiate life as we know it. Natural law is the basis of the teachings like the Ten Commandments, the Upanishads, the Hermetic Principles, and the Enlightenment teachings left behind by the handful of masters who have walked the earth behind us. They teach love, compassion, altruism, eternal return, wisdom, and truth. As we spiritualize, we begin to understand and embody the cosmic laws by which these saints and mystics have manifested higher levels of consciousness. This is a quote from Thomas Berry. The great work now, as we move into a new millennium, is to carry out the transition from a period of human devastation of the earth to a period when humans would be present to the planet in a mutually beneficial manner. Everything has a right to be recognized and revered. Trees have rights. Insects have insect rights. Rivers have river rights, and mountains have river rights. And that's Thomas Berry from his book, The Great Work. Consciousness takes on the nature of the shape and form of the container it enters into. Minerals hold specific energetic frequencies that are each unique in their qualities and properties. The plants eat the minerals. The plants know that they are here to support us. The pharmaceuticals we need to support our well-being are derived from plants. The animals eat the plants. The animals know that they are here to help us as our helpers and companions. When we begin to live according to natural law, we merge into what Jeffrey Wolf Green calls the spiritualized state. Spiritualized does not mean religion. Major world religions all reside in the consensus state. In general, they are proselytizing, patriarchal, and misogynistic. Spiritualized implies embodying natural law as the primary mode and ethics of life. Natural law accepts that everyone deserves respect regardless of gender, nationality, race, color, or creed. It expresses that there's only one of us on spaceship Earth. What affects you affects me. We must be present to all of nature, the animal and plant kingdoms, the earth beneath our feet, and the sky above, upon which we are dependent not just for our survival, but for our abundance. It is the recognition that all of the masters and teachers who walked the planet before us left as the same message. It is the recognition that everything in nature is conscious, that God is love, universal truth, and unconditional love are the magnetic attraction that connects all of life. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has pairs of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. And this is from a book that was discovered in the early 20th century called the Kybalion, that purports to convey the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. And that it is the set of metaphysical perspectives asserting that reality is entirely a mental construct, the concept of as above, so below, and the idea that everything consists of gendered opposites. The principle of polarity is also true of Pluto. The natal position of Pluto's opposite sign and house is known as the Pluto polarity point. The placement of Pluto by house, sign, and aspects in the natal chart defines the evolutionary desire brought in from the past. The Pluto polarity point points to the evolutionary desire and the soul's intended direction for future personal development in the current lifetime. The personality is not conscious of past influences or future intentions. The lessons occur on their own through evolutionary necessity. The Pluto polarity point, PPP, the point opposing Pluto in the birth chart, represents the karmic potential to evolve towards the future. The PPP is the bottom line evolutionary intention for the soul in each life. This primary cause activates the other planetary north nodes, and I'm going to talk about the nodes in a couple of charts, to actualize according to that primary evolutionary intention. Each of the natal planets integrates the past and the future in each moment. Lunar and planetary nodes are essential markers in a natal chart. Any node is the intersection of the planetary or lunar orbit and the Earth's orbit around the sun. No physical body exists in that space, but it emanates a powerful frequency. The moon's nodes are the most well known. The lunar south node holds the composite of our most recent past life moons, our most recent emotional natures. It is our emotional patterning from the past carried forward into this lifetime as our default way of being. The moon is how we see ourselves. The lunar south node is our most familiar self, who we are and how we react by default. It is where we go emotionally, automatically by nature. The lunar north node is the direction our soul intends for us in the future, a pathway fertilized with evolutionary potential. These potentials, however, must be consciously engaged with to be activated, and there is more than one potential future. The nature of our natal moon in this lifetime is the determinant. Mars, the lower octave of Pluto, is the leading edge of our evolution. Each planet in our natal charts also has north and south nodes. Jeffrey Wolf Green stated that each planetary nodal pathway is the evolutionary bridge from the past to the future, anchored in the present lifetime, anchored by the present lifetime, by the present planetary archetype. Like the lunar nodes, the planetary nodes correlate to the past life dynamics relative to each planet, which has led to the current life. The natal planetary position brings the past forward. The north node of the planet correlates to the soul's forward-looking evolutionary trajectory. In the present moment, our choices and behavior, driven by Mars, can reimagine, find a new understanding of the past, and not repeat the same emotional patterning. This is the shift that opens the way to a different future. It is an inconvenient truth that because of the need for security, the past often repeats as the future, fueled by the resistance to change. Pluto's nodes take 24,000 years to complete a single orbit. They spend roughly 2,000 years in a single sign. Everyone on the planet now has Pluto's nodes in Cancer and Capricorn, but in different houses. They may or may not be an aspect to natal planets. It doesn't matter. In evolutionary astrology, the planet, the sign, and the house are the same archetype. Think of it as a dramatic play. The planet is the actor. The sign is the costume that the actor is wearing, and the house is the stage upon which the play is taking place. The archetype of the house placement of Pluto's nodes formats their karmic frequency according to the 12-letter astrological alphabet that sequences the archetypes from Aries through Pluto. Through Pisces. Via the south node of Pluto in Capricorn, we are revisiting the time of the patriarchal takeover to the metamorphose, eliminate, and dissolve the artificial structures, dynamics, beliefs, memories, conditionings, and behavioral patterns of the past. And this is from the late Linda Johnson, who was a certified evolutionary astrologer and the editor of most of Jeffrey Wolf Green's books. Similar in concept to the lunar nodes, the south node of Pluto correlates to the past. The north node correlates to the future. At the fulcrum point is the current Pluto placement. The south node of Pluto in a natal chart describes the karmic patterns from the past and the evolutionary lessons the soul was working on. The determinant is the current Pluto placement. Currently, for all of us, the base node of Pluto's dynamics is expressed through the Cancer-Capricorn polarity. Past experiences have been formatted by the need for emotional security and embedded in ancestral patterning. The current Pluto nodal transit teaches us how to use our power wisely to make the world more secure. It has generated crises and issues around gender, matriarchy, misogyny, racism, and economic disparity. As a side note, it's relevant to report that Pluto's north node is currently transiting the sign of Cancer. Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn during the American Revolution and the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. Transiting Pluto and Pluto's south node currently separates from a conjunction, and you'll see this in a chart in a minute or two, it separates from a conjunction to the US Pluto in Capricorn. Transiting Pluto perfected to a conjunction to US Pluto 3 times in 2021. It was in orb from 2016 and will remain in orb until 2027. These were the years of COVID and the presidency of Donald Trump, which is the perfect lead-in to the next part of my talk. And I will note that portions of this material are paraphrased from Jeffrey Wolf Green's book, Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, Volume 1, and the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology courseware. In the time we have left, I want to demonstrate how the Pluto paradigm works in the chart of two individuals who have some surprisingly similar aspects in their chart, but radically different life expressions.
Excuse
Richard
me,
Alpert.
Daniel. Could I just say something real quick?
Please.
I want to thank everyone for having such a outstanding chat talk. There's a lot of interest and a lot of great chats going on. I know that there's a lot of political charge to what's going on in the United States right now. And we just have a request because we don't know, you may support or not support certain political figures, and to just kind of keep the chat in a easygoing manner. We just ask if you could keep your political thoughts to yourselves, just because we know it can be highly charged and we want to stay focused on the content that Daniel is presenting. So I just wanted to interject that. Sorry, Daniel, for the interruption.
Oh, no, I'm glad you did it. Thank you, Lori. In the time we have left, I want to demonstrate how the Pluto paradigm works in the chart of two individuals who have some surprisingly similar aspects to their chart, but radically different life expressions. Richard Alpert, known as Ram Dass, and Donald J. Trump. As I detail their aspects to Pluto, you will see how the core archetypes of the entire chart are revealed. Richard Alpert, who adopted the spiritual name of Ram Dass, is in the Eastern spiritual tradition, and Donald J. Trump are both prominent 20th century personalities born and raised on the East Coast of the United States. Both individuals share the following aspects in their charts: 10th house Sun, Uranus, lunar North Node conjunction, Moon in Sagittarius, 4th house, 4th, 10th house nodal axis, and Mars on the ascendant are in the 1st house. I just want to add to Laura's remarks that none of the following details about Donald Trump has anything to do with political beliefs. These are documented facts regarding litigation and felonious activity. They may be difficult if you think you're on his side. These are just the facts, ma'am. Donald Trump and the Trump Organization have been plaintiffs or defendants in more than 4,000 state and federal legal actions, including 6 bankruptcies. Trump promoted conspiracy theories and made many false and misleading statements during his campaigns and presidency. As president, Trump ordered a travel ban on citizens from several Muslim-majority countries, diverted military funding toward building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, and implemented a policy of family separations for migrants detained at the U.S. border. He weakened environmental protections, cut taxes for businesses, rescinded the Affordable Care Act, reacted slowly to the COVID-19 pandemic, ignoring or contradicting health officials, withdrew the U.S. from the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and the Iran nuclear deal, and refused to concede after losing the 2020 presidential election. On January 6, 2021, he urged his supporters to march to the U.S. Capitol, resulting in multiple deaths and interrupting the electoral vote count. Trump is the only American president to have been impeached twice. In 2023, a civil jury found that Trump sexually abused E. Jean Carroll. He was also indicted in New York on 34 felony counts, in Florida on 40 felony counts, in Washington, D.C. on 4 felony counts, and in Georgia on 13 racketeering charges. Donald Trump is a third-stage consensus soul. Over many lifetimes, he has been learning how to get ahead and play the game. In this lifetime, he's making up his own rules. With Pluto, it is in Pluto. It is in his 10th house. In his 12th house. Donald Trump is a Pisces soul, which at first glance is somewhat surprising, as we normally view the 12th house as holding a spiritual vibration. Pisces souls often have boundary issues. Pisces souls have had the prior evolutionary intent or desire to align themselves with some belief system. Their belief system does not necessarily have to be of a higher vibration. Sometimes the planets in the 12th house and the aspects they make are the likely sources of the types of delusion the individual will experience. For starters, Trump has Uranus conjunct the lunar north node in his 10th house and Pluto in his 12th house. So did serial killer Ted Bundy. These people come into life with a sense of standing on a precipice. An inner struggle is always present. They must decide what to do, go forward, go backward, or remain on the precipice, paralyzed from movement. Many will experience some metamorphosis or cataclysmic change. This appears to occur by itself. This process teaches them that they are a connected part of the whole. These people are born with a deep personal sense of right and wrong. They judge themselves and others in a personally idealized sense. They react negatively when human behavior does not live up to their ideal. Many have drawn lifetimes of persecution. Some are born with a sense of victimization or martyrdom. Some will avoid reality through drugs, alcohol, or other kinds of avoidance, subterfuge, or denial. 12th house Pluto people need to learn what judgment means and how to exercise proper judgment. They strive to see or experience their own individual expression as an extension of the source of creation. In other words, they think of themselves as beyond reproach. Pisces souls are intensely private and sensitive. They take things to heart. They often harbor deep and unresolved fears. With Pluto polarity point in the 6th house, these Pisces souls must learn how and why they are the way they are, and how and why they work the way they do. They typically must experience deep cycles of deep crisis. The crisis forces them to deal with what is. Many have an unconscious compulsion to create a crisis. They are often unaware of this pattern and cannot understand why the situation keeps occurring. The intent here is to learn humility. So I've put up Trump's chart. You can see the nodes to Pluto on the outside of the chart, and these are just aspects to Pluto. The Moon Pluto 4th house applies to a gibbous sesquiquadrate to his 10th house Pluto in Cancer. An inherent, insecure, gibbous, emotionally driven Cancer crisis Pluto create experiential restlessness, Sagittarius, that drives his angst, gibbous. His 10th house Sun in Gemini applies to a new phase semi-square to 10th house Pluto in Cancer. The moon in Sagittarius that I just described rules Pluto, which feeds his restless quest, Sagittarius, for doctrines and agendas, Gemini, that feed his distorted sense of his own self-importance, Moon 4th house Sagittarius. He identifies and self-actualizes the Sun based on his exaggerated opinions and ideas, Gemini, driven by personal crises, new phase semi-square, that he relies on to support his distorted self-importance, Pluto. His 11th house, Venus in Cancer, ruled by his Sagittarius moon in his 4th house, applies to a new phase semi-sextile to his 10th house, Pluto in Cancer. Lack of understanding, new phase semi-sextile about authentic family, Venus in Cancer, values and priorities, Venus, populate and create insecurity, Cancer, about his self-empowerment, Pluto. His 10th house, Uranus in Gemini, applies to a partile, full-phase septile to 10th house Pluto in Cancer. There is a fated quality in destiny, septile, that unfolds as a result of his self-centered Leo Uranus, personal opinions and ideas, Gemini, that underscores his sense of self-empowerment, Pluto. 7th house Vesta in Pisces separates from a disseminating sesquiquadrate to 10th house Pluto in Cancer. There is an overriding lack of respect for the sanctity, Pisces, of others. It is easy for him to overstep his boundaries and disrespect the boundaries of others, Pisces. There's also the emotional, Cancer, Pisces, need to share, disseminating his rightfulness, Vestina, with others. 4th house lunar south node separates from a disseminating sesquisquare to 10th house Pluto in Cancer. A sense of betrayal and abandonment in the past, Pisces, holds him hostage, Pisces, inflating his self-importance, Pluto. Insecurity, Cancer, from past karmic necessity, lunar south node, drives his need for control as part of his Pluto complex. His 12th house Pluto in Leo separates from a disseminating trine to Eris in Aries in his 8th house. Eris fuels his rogue nature and aberrant behavior, makes him need to control others, 8th house, seeks other dark individuals with whom to align, 8th house, and inflates his sense of self-importance, Leo. 5th house Capricorn south node of Pluto in Sagittarius applies to a gibbous sesquiquadrate to his 12th house Pluto in Leo. Subconscious karmic anxieties, gibbous, from the past, Pluto south node, distort, sesquiquadrate, the methods by which his personality, 5th house Leo, has developed. North node of Pluto in Cancer, 11th, his individuality has developed, lunar north node, primarily from identification with family wealth and power, Cancer, and associations with other antisocial individuals, Pluto. Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, was an American spiritual teacher. Excuse me, 1 minute. Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, was an American spiritual teacher, modern yoga guru, psychologist, and writer. His 1971 book, Be Here Now, helped popularize Eastern spirituality and yoga in the West. Ram Dass was personally and professionally associated with Timothy Leary at Harvard University in the early 1960s. Then known as Richard Alpert, he conducted research with Leary on the therapeutic effects of psychedelic drugs. Their controversial research led to Leary's and Albert's dismissal from Harvard in 1963. In 1967, Alpert traveled to India and became a disciple of Hindu guru Neem Karoli Baba, who gave him the name Ram Dass, meaning servant of God. He co-founded the Seva Foundation and Hanuman Foundation charitable organizations. He traveled extensively, giving talks and retreats, holding fundraisers for charitable causes. In 1997, he had a stroke. After becoming seriously ill during a trip to India in 2004, he moved to Maui, Hawaii, where he hosted annual retreats with other spiritual teachers until he died in 2019. We will see that both individuals had contrasting life expressions. Trump was clearly about the accumulation of wealth. Ram Dass was dedicated to the dissemination of spiritual beliefs and practices worldwide. I think that Trump is a third stage consensus individual, wanting not just to play the game of materiality, but to win it without considering method or morality. Ram Dass was a third stage spiritualized soul, magnetized by millions by his passing. In third stage spiritual, there is a progressive evolution from being what I called a guru versus an avatar. Guru means God realized. There are all levels of God realization. The sign of an avatar is that their teachings impact and affect millions and survive beyond their death. And that's paraphrased from Jeffrey Wolf Green. Richard Alpert, Ram Dass, was anchored in discovering his greatest potential. With Pluto in Cancer in his first house, Ram Dass is an Aries soul, ruled by Mars and Leo, also in his first house. He was a pioneer and an explorer, entirely self-directed, willing to go where no man has gone before. Richard Alpert was a teacher. As Ram Dass, he became a guru. Aries souls are pioneers and explorers. Aries souls are born to experience the process of self-discovery and self-actualization. They meet the world head-on. Aries souls are learning about themselves. Aries is the fire element, the cardinal sign of the fire triad that continues through Leo and Sagittarius. Fire is spirit, which Ram Dass embodied heart and soul. He was born to self-actualize who he became. Aries individuals feel a sense of special destiny, which is evident in his life expression. Just attaining a full tenure as a professor at Harvard is an accomplishment enough, but he took it to the limit, experimenting with different paths to become a spiritual teacher who left behind a body of work for the generations that followed him. His life expressed his independence and a sense of personal self-discovery. This creates the need to initiate relationships with others to find the answer to who am I question. Who am I question. The impetus is to manifest the courage and will to be different and strike out independently. The Pluto polarity point in his seventh house potentiates balance and initiates the need for relationships with others. As one to many, he shared his teaching and lifestyle with the world. As Ram Dass, he understood that there was something he could learn about himself through interactions with others. He saw himself in others. His fourth house moon in Sagittarius separates from a disseminating sesqui-square to his first house Pluto in Cancer. This is the same moon Pluto aspect as Donald J. Trump, but in this chart, Pluto is in Cancer, and the moon separates from Pluto. In this case, the aspect is not latent, but active, activating the need to share, disseminating his spiritual message, Sagittarius, to the world. He had been driven to challenge himself, sesqui-square, and make choices that reinvent who he is in the world. Mars in Leo, first house, Jupiter in Cancer. Prior to this lifetime, Ram Dass developed a sense of security, Cancer, and self-empowerment, Pluto, through learning experiences, moon and Sagittarius, that helped him understand and master the development of human consciousness, Pisces soul, and apply what he had learned in this lifetime, Pluto first house. His 10th house sun in Aries applies to a last quarter crisis in consciousness square to his first house, Pluto in Cancer. In this lifetime, Ram Dass took responsibility, 10th house, for what he has learned, crossing the last threshold of the self-actualization process, Sun in Aries, fully expressing his authentic spiritual nature and actualizing it as who he was in the world. Moon in Sagittarius, Jupiter conjunct ascendant, North Node Pluto conjunct ascendant Jupiter, Pluto. The 10th house Mercury in Taurus applies to a last quarter quintile to the 10th house Pluto in Cancer. A complete cycle of personal individuality has unfolded. Last quarter quintile. His self-reliant Mercury in Taurus, ideas and opinions, and his understanding of the world around him, Mercury, support his beliefs, Moon in Sagittarius, which are necessary for healthy emotional Cancer, self-expression, Sun in Aries. 8th house, Venus in Pisces, separates from a gibbous sesquiquadrate to the 1st house, Pluto in Cancer. As the ruler of his Mercury in Taurus, this has created the crises and new choices that required personal growth, Mars in Leo, and necessary stresses, 1st house Pluto, that brought new understanding, Mercury, that compassion and forgiveness, Pisces, to his values and priorities, Venus. 12th house Jupiter in Cancer applies to a balsamic conjunction to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. His self-actualization process, Jupiter, formatted his deep-seated need to nurture and help others grow. Jupiter, balsamic conjunction to Pluto in the 12th house in Cancer, to achieve their greatest potential, motivating his powerful outreach worldwide, Moon in Sagittarius. 7th house Saturn in Capricorn separates from a full phase opposition to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. He is grounded in his sense of responsibility to others as a father figure, Saturn, to reach out, Moon in Sagittarius, and empower others compassionately, Saturn, full phase opposition to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. 10th house Uranus in Aries applies to a disseminating square to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. This is the self-actualizing Uranus internal pressure square that he felt to become a world-class teacher, Moon in Sagittarius, and share, disseminating his sacred sense of who he was about personal growth with others. 1st house Mars in Leo opposite 7th house Vesta in Capricorn. 2nd house Neptune in Virgo applies to a partile new phase semi-square to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. As a result, this crisis-causing struggle, partile, new phase, he sacrificed 2nd house Neptune Virgo, his career with his exploration, 10th house Sun in Aries, of the promise of psychedelic research, Neptune, to understand the benefits and uncharted boundaries of LSD, 12th house Pluto, Neptune. His spiritual self-house, 2nd house Neptune, encouraged and brought compassion, Cancer, to others, stemming from the work he had done on himself over many lifetimes, North Node Pluto conjunct ascendant Jupiter, Pluto. 6th house Vesta in Capricorn applies to a balsamic conjunction to 7th house Saturn in Capricorn, both applying to a gibbous opposition to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. His authenticity, Vesta, generates Saturn, the need to share his personal experiences, Saturn-Vesta conjunction on his descendant opposite Jupiter-Pluto conjunction on the ascendant with others and guide them on their own paths. The lunar North Node separates from a last quarter crisis in consciousness square to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. His lunar South Node applies to a crescent square to 1st house Pluto in Cancer. The North Node of Pluto is partile conjunct his Pluto ascendant. The South Node of Pluto is partile conjunct his descendant. The conjunctions of the nodes of Pluto to his ascendant and descendant, combined with the skipped step squares of his lunar nodes to Pluto, indicate that in the current lifetime, Ram Dass has had the karmic necessity, lunar North Node, to achieve the higher state of consciousness that brought what he had learned over many lifetimes to millions of other souls. South Node Pluto, partile descendant. This is just the analysis of Pluto in the two charts, but you can see that it has touched on all the major themes of the chart. There is more planetary data to be mined by examining all of the other planetary aspects, but they will support what has already been learned. Do this on your own chart to see what it might reveal. This is how you can contact me. It is my experience that my readings will tell you things that no one else has told you before. You can read about my work and sign up for my newsletter on my website, evolutionaryastrologer.net. And you can email me at daniel@evolutionaryastrology.net or call me at 505-930-2748 to schedule a reading. So thank you very much for your attention and patience, and I am ready to answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful, Daniel. Thank you for a great presentation. All the hearts coming in, all the claps. I don't know if you can see that on your end.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
Absolutely
you.
wonderful. I love your very calm and informative voice. As you were speaking, I was minding myself when I walk around the park and I'm listening to Alan Watts. So I'd love to have like an audio version of your speeches as well as I'm walking around. Absolutely wonderful. Are you ready for some Q&A questions?
I certainly am.
Wonderful. Let's have a look. We've had a very lively debate today, and of course, there's nothing wrong with a healthy debate and everyone talking. I know Donald Trump is a very controversial and polarizing figure, but I think these debates and talks are important. So there's a couple of questions here that I might condense down to. What are your thoughts around maybe some of the shared or same beliefs as the Pluto and Leo generation, or mostly baby boomers in that particular generation?
Hang on, I'm still playing with the windows here to get you full screen if I can.
Okay.
Not able to do it. Okay, could you repeat the question, Cal? Sorry.
Yeah, we've got a few of the same similar questions, and some of them are relating to the Pluto and Leo generation, of course, mainly or mostly baby boomers. So is it fair to say that, the question we've got here, is it fair to say that all Pluto and Leo baby boomers share the same or similar beliefs? What are your thoughts around that question?
Oh, yes, there's no question. I kind of touched on that briefly. Our generation really changed the whole paradigm of what it was meant to be, a woman or a man. Everything changed at that point. The generation before us, as I said, was very much men were more men. Men went to work. Women, for the most part, stayed home. They had the babies. They prepared the meals. They cleaned the house. When Pluto, Leo and Aquarius are the self-actualizing polarity. In Leo, we become who we are over time, over the course of our lifetime. So we changed that paradigm. We didn't want to. The women didn't want to stay home anymore. Women wanted to work. They wanted to go out and earn some money. They wanted to have a career and escape that gender trap that they were in. That they were restricted to certain activities in life. And obviously there were exceptions to the rule before the Leo generation, but I think the Leo generation was greatly responsible for helping people self-actualize who they really wanted to become, irregardless of gender.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have quite a philosophical question here, quite an interesting one. And they're asking what might happen or what would happen if one of the planets in our solar system were to explode or disappear, and what would that do to our astrology and the astronomy for the individuals? That's quite an interesting philosophical question.
Wow. Well, that's scary. If one of the planets, well, it's interesting that you bring that up. There is a theory or an idea, or I don't know what to call it, but the asteroid belt. Okay, the asteroid belt is thousands, of objects between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars, and within that asteroid belt is Ceres with its perfectly round shape. Hindu philosophy teaches that there was a great war in the sky between the gods, and I think that there are probably some other mythological references to it. And it has been suggested that at one time there was a planet between Mars and Jupiter, and the asteroid belt, that something happened to that planet. There's a huge scar across the face of Mars that's unexplainable. That it's very possible, and I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm putting this out because I've heard this story, that there was a planet that existed between Jupiter and Mars, and the asteroid belt is the remnants of that planet, and that Ceres was actually the core of that planet. It's why it's perfectly round. So what you're saying is feasible in some way. I think obviously it would change, it would change a lot of things. It's hard to say what would change depending on which planet exploded. If it was a planet next to the Earth, I think we'd be in trouble. I mean, if it was Venus or Mars, I think we'd be in deep doo-doo.
Might just not change the astrology. We might all just disappear ourselves. So
Right, exactly. I think yeah, a whole new paradigm would have to. Life goes on. Life does not end because a planet explodes, and the certainly the universe is much greater than just our little home world here and our home environment in our solar system. So I think things would go on. They would just go on without us in some way.
A question here on solar returns and the Pluto position maybe in a particular house. Can that reveal the karmic lessons of the year in your experience?
What was the question? Solar return and what?
Yeah, in terms of for people's pulling up their solar returns and where maybe their Pluto possibly and using do you primarily use porphyry for your house systems? That was another question as well.
Yes, I do.
So when people are pulling up their solar returns, the position of Pluto in their chart, can that reveal the karmic lessons of the year?
I think I would look at the houses in which the nodes of Pluto are occupying. You saw the nodes of Pluto. I could probably bring that chart back. You can kind of see on this chart from SolarFire with the extra points on it. It's where those nodes of Pluto are externally, and certainly where where Pluto is in the solar return is important. But we have to remember that a solar return is about the sun. Okay, and so what we're looking at is really understanding the sun's position in that chart at that moment of time when that return occurs, and where Pluto is relative by house and aspect to the other planets in that chart is going to support what's going on with the sun. But Pluto in a solar return is not going to change the entire Pluto paradigm of the lifetime. It's going to be a finite effect, really based on that 12 months of unfolding of the solar return itself. Is that I don't know if the participant is available, but does that kind of answer the question?
We've got so many questions coming in. We're not going to get to all of them anyhow.
All right, just go through it. Just go
I like to go in a fairly chronological order for a sense of fairness. So another question we had further back, again, more of a philosophical question. Do you think we plant our birth in our lifetimes, in terms of reincarnation, planning our birth and selecting the current the planetary arrangements, for our natal chart as we come back to Earth? What are your thoughts around that question?
Well, first of all, I don't think that time is linear. I think that time is simultaneous. And so I think that, somebody once asked God, why did you create time? And he or she answered so that everything wouldn't happen all at once. So we have to kind of take that perspective that this is all happening all at once, Cal. And it's why we can be hypnotized or regressed or have flashbacks to maybe to another lifetime, remembering past lives, because they're as close to us as the tip of our nose, but we don't see them. So we are connected to all of those different parts of ourselves through the soul, and through our own karmic memories and genetic memories, because it is embedded in our DNA, and Pluto is our DNA, and we have brought it forward. So yes, but our parents don't choose us; we choose our parents. I think is the other side of the coin here. That we are. It refers to that first slide of Sri Yukteswar, where the moment of birth is chosen karmically according to exactly the energetic frequencies that we need for this lifetime.
Fantastic. We actually have a question here, a couple of questions on the orbs you use in your work. So what orbs are you using in your work?
In general, I for major transits, I use a 10-degree orb. For minor aspects, anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees.
Okay, wonderful. So we touched, there's a few more questions coming in on the Pluto in different generations. Now, we touched on the Pluto and Leo generation. What are your thoughts about the collective direction of the Pluto in Virgo generation, the Pluto in Scorpio generation? What are your thoughts on each generation there? I know that's a very long-winded question, so maybe go through Pluto and Virgo first. What are your thoughts?
Well, Virgo I referred to. Virgo is about health and well-being, and I think that the Pluto and Virgo generation had a lot to do with really establishing holistic health care, and just learning to take care of ourselves, the food that we eat. The Pluto and Scorpio generation, I think we have seen, to a great degree. I don't want to again, be negative about any of it, but we've seen a digression in terms of the healthiness of our world, and I think that we have seen that a lot of the practices that are the native cultures normally adopted. The Europeans came here to the States, and they infected everybody with diseases that the natives had no resistance to. And I think in some ways, that's what's beginning to happen to our world, where there are COVID, I think, is an excellent example. I mean, the idea of a self-mutating virus is really kind of scary. And the idea that the whole healthiness of the planet itself has slowly deteriorated over the last 30, 40, 50 years. The Pluto and Capricorn generation is the one that I kind of like. It's my favorite generation, in the sense that I think that they're going to build Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. It's their role. They're gonna put this all back together. And I think that the Pluto and Sag generation will also be assisting, because clearly they're because they're inputting new ideas and bringing natural law and a different way of life support back into the planet. It's all coming around again.
And sorry, I don't want to miss out the folks with the Pluto Libra generation. So let me know your thoughts there as well.
Keep going.
Your thoughts on Pluto and Libra generation, and then probably the last one for Scorpio. What are your thoughts?
What was the first? I'm sorry. What was the first one? Pluto?
I said I didn't want to skip the Pluto and Libra generation. Just a general idea of the or set of beliefs, or what are your thoughts on that?
All right. So Libra is clearly about relationships, and Libra really, activates a multitude of relationships to learn about itself. And I think that the Pluto and Libra generation, again, has had a lot to do with the way that the collective has spread out and expanded into so many more different directions, because there are many, many things that people can explore in relationships. It's also had a lot to do with gender, how gender has been, totally, transformed. And, again, it's still in a process, but it's become front and center. Gender is no longer defined by our body type. Gender is defined by who we think we are, and being given the personal liberty to express it. Sag, as I said, I think is bringing a lot of new thought and experience. The Sag generation are the hikers and campers, and the ones that have really opened up the access to nature to a great degree. And to the wilderness, and have gotten behind a lot of the ecological movement. Who have I skipped? Libra, Scorpio, Sag, it's too soon to talk about Aquarius.
Too soon for those lot.
too soon for Aquarius. But again, I mean, Aquarius has been heralded as a new age, and I kind of hold on to that in some way as a framework itself. That we're going, certainly, it's no doubt in my mind, looking at what's aspect wise and transit wise over the next 5-10 years, let alone the next 20 years, that there's some rough roads ahead. And I think that it's like I said, we grow through crisis, Cal. We grow through emotional stuff, and we're having those emotional experiences so that we can grow. We've gotten away with murder to a great degree. We've been given a pass on so many things for so many decades that now the bill has come. We're going to have to pay the bill, and get stuff, get it right.
Absolutely. Speaking from a Pluto and Scorpio generation, we've got those heavier, more intense themes. So yeah, thank you for going through the generations there. Absolutely wonderful. So we are end of time here, and I would just like to reiterate, we'll get this replay up in the next couple of days on our YouTube channel to watch again. And on behalf of Kepler College, again, thank you, Daniel, so much for this fascinating presentation and putting this together. We wish to thank you so much for doing this. And thank you all for attending. We love our worldwide community, for everyone zooming in, even for our friends in Australia. I know it's early for you guys and all around the world. Thank you all for coming today.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Thanks for being here. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Lori.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.